But one of the first concepts that we looked at was what you can think of as collective efficacy theory. And this, in a sense, is charted out here in this particular slide. Collective efficacy really tries to unite two concepts. First of all, a sense of cohesion or ties among residents. Now we're not talking about deep personal ties where you're having dinner with your neighbors every night, but a sense of working trust and acknowledgement of neighbors. And secondly, a sense of the expectations about control. That is, what people will do under certain conditions of challenge. And shared expectations are crucial. When you're in any environment, the shared expectations for how you act is an important theoretical concept. And this goes back actually in the history of social thought. And we thought about this and carried it out with, we thought was a somewhat innovative way, was to use vignettes where we asked residents, how likely is it, for example, if kids were skipping school and hanging out in the corner, how likely is it residents would do something about it? And that could range. It could range from intervening with the kids to calling the school to calling the police. So it's informal social control, but it can involve formal institutions. That's the key. It's that connection rather than doing nothing. And cohesion and shared expectations for control are highly related to one another. They vary tremendously across neighborhoods. And it is related, as you might expect, collective efficacy, that is the collectiveness part, the efficacy, the intentions to do something. It's undermined by concentrated disadvantage, neighborhoods that are turning over rapidly. It's importantly related to network ties and organizations. So we looked at, in a sense, the whole picture of what the causes of collective efficacy are, but also what the influence of collective efficacy is on crime. And that's the, go to the purple arrow down to the right, we found collective efficacy related to violence, to other aspects of health. So now for a little bit of, it's a little bit tougher work here, but I tried to make these as straightforward as possible. This shows you the association of collective efficacy and time with later homicide rates. What we did is to look at, using our multiple surveys, we did at two different points in time, 1995, 2002, and then we looked at the homicide rate after that from 96 to 2000, and then after the 2002 survey up to 2006. And this controls for a number of factors that are important in the literature, such as poverty, friend, kinship ties, prior homicide too. So it's almost change in homicide. And the dark bars to the left are the lowest quartile in collective efficacy, the lowest 25% distribution of neighborhoods. And the right is the highest quartile. And this difference, by the way, these are raw homicide rates, about 16 to 4 to 10.4. It's about a 50% difference in homicide. So that's it's not only significant, but it's substantively large. Now, if you believe this model and you work out the math, it's something like about 150 fewer killings over the period of about 5 years associated with that change in collective efficacy, net of the other characteristics. What about change? You know, neighborhoods differ. Maybe our controls didn't work so well. Another way to look at this is the change within a neighborhood over time. In this analysis, what I did was to take each year as a unit of analysis. That is, I calculated the homicide rate in 95, 96, 97, looked at it over time, then calculated the rate of change, whether it accelerated or decelerated. As we know, crime was going down. So an interesting question one can ask is the neighborhood change, how the neighborhood is changing, rated, is it related to the rate of decline or the rate of deceleration? And it is. If you look at this chart, I think the easiest thing is to compare the blue and the red lines. The blue line shows the homicide trajectory from 96 to 2006. And those are basically communities where there were decreases in collective efficacy and increases in poverty. And basically, you see a pretty flat trajectory. Again, there was a secular decline in crime, but it was not going down as fast in those areas. Whereas the red dashed line are areas with increases in collective efficacy and decreases in poverty. And you see a distinct and significant differences. This controls for other changes as well, and I think provides a different way of looking at the matter. I said a moment ago that it's not just the internal characteristics. This is not a story about, oh, there's a magic bullet out there, collective efficacy. This is just one factor. And this chart shows you the importance of the surrounding context. So what we can do is to say a neighborhood has a certain poverty rate, a certain rate of collective efficacy, a certain rate of homicide. But what about the neighborhoods around them? Well, we can actually measure those. And spatial statistics and spatial methodologies have come a long way. So what we were able to do is to take all the neighborhoods into Chicago and look at the kind of the ripple effects of what does it mean for a community to be located in a high-risk environment or next to other high crime rate neighborhoods. Does that have any independent effect? And it does. It has a large effect. This particular model, although it looks simple, there's only 4 bars, actually controls for a lot of the usual suspects out there in terms of racial composition and poverty, density, and so forth. But what you see when you compare the 2 bars on the left with the 2 bars on the right, that's the effect of collective efficacy, and this is a standardized homicide rate. So what you can see basically is that these areas have higher homicide rates than these areas. That's the direct effect of collective efficacy. Whereas this, even though a community may internally have high rates of collective efficacy, that's not enough, right? That's not necessarily a protective factor, because you can see that this area is surrounded by high poverty, high crime areas, and that has direct influence net of the internal characteristics. Similarly, the rate of over here for high collective efficacy areas, you can see that when you're surrounded, the rate matters. So it's saying that both characteristics matter. That means then that in thinking about policy and thinking about theory, we really have to take the larger social structure into account. It's really a mediation of, well, individuals, neighborhoods, communities around the city, and even macro level city policies. I'll come back to that too.